Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cloud Conversations. This is episode 23, and I'm Peter Rising, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you all to our show today. And we're going to start with some absolutely fantastic news, which I couldn't be happier to share with you. As we record this, it's actually in breaking the fourth wall here. It's the 1st of September, but this goes out on Friday. But little insider secrets there. But as we record this, Rue, my good friend, has received the fantastic and well-deserved news that he's been awarded as a Microsoft MVP in enterprise mobility. So absolutely fantastic, well-deserved. And Rue, how are you feeling?
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, really good. Excited, weird, a whole bunch of different emotions. You know, it's. I've had a crazy year. Like, it's funny because I was looking at my calendar for the last 12 months, and it's like every month there's just been some kind of whirlwind crazy event, and this kind of just accumulates in the MVP award. But it's all good stuff, right? And it's funny because I've going back to working in kind of internal IT, you kind of look at MVP with a degree of mystique, right? Because I remember reading when I was studying things like Windows Server, and you'd read books by guys that are no longer MVPs, guys like Mark Manazzi. And it's like you get the inspiration from them, and now it's like, oh, you're one of them. And it's just a strange feeling, and you hope that you can live up to the kind of the badge that comes with it. And hopefully we are. And obviously I need to thank you in large part for this, because obviously you've supported me through this whole journey. So I really appreciate that. And I'll always sing your praises for it. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, my friend. An absolute pleasure. Get my teeth in. But,
good stuff. But anyway, this show it isn't about me. We're delighted today to be joined by our guest, Anna Chu. And I was about to introduce Anna and let you all know what Anna does at Microsoft, but I don't know how accurate that is anymore. So what I'm instead going to do is I'm going to hand over to Anna, and I'm going to say, Anna, can you introduce yourself and let folks know what you're all about?
Thank you for having me on the show, Rue. Hi, Peter. It's always good to see faces in the community. So I kind of announced on Twitter that I am stepping away from my role at the Microsoft Tech community on the 31st, last day of August. Basically, I've moved from marketing to engineering, and today is my first day in role as the PM for Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents. So shifting from marketing to engineering is certainly a daunting task. I have no idea what I'm doing yet, but I'm really excited. I'm very passionate about the Power Platform and what it enables people to do. So very excited about what we could be working on. And I'm certain that there's going to be a lot of connections to what I used to do around community for, Microsoft 365, as well as other things. One of the things that was really important for me as I thought about my next role was to have community at the heart of the role, no matter what. I've done the work at the Microsoft Tech community for the last 6 years, and the thing that really energized me and kept me going was all the great community voices. Certainly, really great, characters and individuals and people who are super passionate about the products, people who have given us very constructive criticism about our products as well. But hey, that's all part of the conversation, so that we can get better feedback to help us create better products.
Yeah, love it. No, it's funny. It's something that Pete opened the show by talking about the MVP thing. It's one of the things that, as we've had discussions with folk at Microsoft, has been quite illuminating to me, is that you guys want all the feedback, the good and the bad, the warts and all.
Yes.
And I guess it can be easy, right, to just throw all the negative feedback. We're all human at the end of the day. But I guess how do Microsoft then process that feedback and, take it and use it to make good products is always a question that folks are interested in.
Yeah. Well, you can ask me this question in a month's time when I have a better feeling of it from the engineering point of view. But certainly from a marketing perspective, what I did when I led the tech community was at least create the open channel so that the feedback can be funneled through an official forum, an official place where that people from the not only from Microsoft are listening, but people in the community are also able to foster that conversation about particular features or ways that the products work. So I think, one of the things that's really important, and, I know that we're going to talk a lot about the Microsoft Tech community, because when Peter approached me for this podcast, it was very much about that to start with. But the Microsoft Tech community is having that as an official place for people to congregate around these conversations is really important. People could talk on Twitter or Reddit or all sorts of other places, but you could be potentially talking into a vacuum if nobody's really there who is accountable and responsible for making any changes around the product. So it was really important for us to foster that. Trying to create one place for all community conversations is certainly very tough in a place like Microsoft when there are so many different places that people like to, have send us feedback. We're certainly going through a lot of change. I don't know if you're aware, but user voice used to be the one place that people would largely go to send feedback, but Microsoft has made a decision to move away from user voice and try and create one centralized place for feedback. Still in the works as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, like we are certainly trying to make a way for people to have one destination to have those kind of conversations, because, I would really hope for, Peter to be having conversations about, M365 in the same place that he's having conversations about Power Platform potentially, because we want to recognize you as one person, one human being, and we want to foster all of the different learning that you could have about our products. Having to go to so many different places makes things very difficult.
Absolutely, yeah. And the Microsoft Tech community is an absolutely phenomenal thing. And
you're addicted to it, aren't you? You know that?
I am. I mean, I'm always on there, and it does become addictive. But and trying to help people out, it's just so nice to try and help people out with the issues they come to the tech community with. But I was having a look earlier today just to see some stats, and I know it's grown phenomenally over the past couple of years. But when I checked today, it's got 650,000 members overall, I believe, and about 1.8 million discussions, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'm sort of interested in, can you share a little bit with us about what the genesis of it was, how it got started, how it's grown and evolved, and what it means to you personally?
Oh, yes. Let me give you a abridged history of the Microsoft Tech community. So we launched it in September 2016 at Microsoft Ignite, back when it was I think it was in Atlanta. I think, anyway, my memory escapes me because, gosh, we miss in-person conferences. I don't even know what the inside of an exhibition hall looks like anymore. But yes, Microsoft Ignite is the premier IT Pro developer technical event that Microsoft runs every year. And we usually see upwards of 30,000 people attending these conferences in person. But now we're doing everything virtually, so that's we can talk about that another time too. But certainly we launched it then, and before that, there's a whole story about that too. So the genesis of the Microsoft Tech community actually started with an external Yammer network called the Office 365 network. And it was a community that, was solely about Microsoft Office 365. And it, at its peak, reached 80,000 members. But we came to a crossroads and thought, you know what, we know that we're kind of stagnating. We're not growing as fast as we would like. We know there are some difficulties in getting people to get into the external Yammer network because of IT admin settings that wouldn't allow people to access these external networks. But there was also so much goodness being shared in the community itself that wasn't being indexed by search, because you had to log in order to find all of the information. You couldn't access the community unauthenticated. So we also noticed that people were also having conversations about products outside of Microsoft Office 365. They were talking about Azure. They were talking about Dynamics 365. And so, we thought, okay, maybe it's time. Maybe we've got to the point where we need to, one, create a brand new community platform that allows for the community discussions to be available through search. So if you looked up, Microsoft groups, then you would actually be able to see those results through Google or through Bing. We also thought, hey, let's actually open it up and make it a one Microsoft community, even though we may not have the buy-in from every single product group just yet, but let's just start and see how we go. And hopefully if our results if we could see that we've gathered the party together. People will think, you know what, Ash is going to come to the party, etc., etc. And that's exactly what happened. It was certainly a struggle in the first couple of years because we really had to prove ourselves, and we were constantly iterating on our feature set. So we started with all of the forums, we moved towards blogs, and we certainly saw a lot of popularity with our blogs, much because the types of blogs that you see in the tech community are a lot different to what you would see on blogs.microsoft.com. And that's because those articles are really designed to really make some moves on a media standpoint, whereas then they would never get down to the detail in terms of technical depth. They wouldn't show you the massive screenshots that you need to see or in-depth videos or anything like that. Also, they don't really enable for commenting either. We really wanted to foster that kind of interaction. So we enabled that particular feature around blogs. We started adding more as we saw the pandemic really shift the way that people wanted to engage through communities. Events certainly was a big part of that. So we started to do a lot more support for technical readiness. And when I say technical readiness, I mean online, on-demand training. And so launching the video hub on the tech community was a really big part of that. Because one thing that you may not notice is that with a lot of events going virtual, like Microsoft Build, Microsoft Ignite, there is all sorts of great goodness that is shared there. But that site ultimately disappears once the new event comes around the corner. So we wanted to house a place where we could support, on-demand video access for technical content 24/7, 365 days of the year. And certainly we're working on, the team was working on archiving things that were out of date. But otherwise, it was designed to be a platform to enable IT professional developers, anyone who wants to receive and get updates of a technical nature to stay connected to community as well as stay connected to news and the experts at Microsoft as well.
That's a really good overview and history, I guess, of how it all came together. And one of the things I kind of want to pick up that you mentioned there was, it was a case of, it was difficult, or in a lot of cases, you didn't really even have the time to get the buy-in from all the different teams prior to going live with it, right? Because it's an interesting thing to me when I go online and I see folks say they will say something like Microsoft really needs to do XYZ. Yeah. And when I hear that, I think, okay, when you say Microsoft, you're talking about an organization of 100,000 plus people. So it's kind of, it's like a big city and there's so many moving parts to it. You can't wait for all of those to kind of line up and join together before you go with stuff. And that's why I guess with Microsoft, and as really tech in general gets bigger and bigger, you just have to start somewhere, right? And it's not going to be perfect when you start. It's going to be messy and you just have to stumble your way about it and figure it out and then get better as time goes on. Because that's always something that's fascinated me, is how do you take a company that's so massive and then get everyone to buy into something like tech community? Because it's really good insofar as the blogs you mentioned. Yeah. I think almost all certainly my little bubble in security, it's great for always finding out the latest technical details about stuff like Defender or Intune or things like that. But it's really been adopted across the whole company. Yeah. Which is really impressive. Yeah. It's interesting. I think with working at Microsoft, you definitely have to gain momentum, but you also need executive support in order to make sure that momentum doesn't slow down or get lost or just be more accelerated, just to grease the wheels, so to speak. So, we had a lot of support from, 6 years at Microsoft is honestly a lifetime, quite frankly. If I think about the genesis of the tech community, we had a lot of support from then corporate vice president Julia White, who's since moved on from Microsoft. She works at SAP. But having someone like that who understands the ethos of community and why it is so critical in the journey of someone who is an IT pro or developer. Having someone like that who gets it makes it a lot easier for you to push the community agenda and helping something like the Microsoft Tech community grow. I've been on and observed many a project that had really great ideas and great foresight, but ultimately died on the vine because they just didn't have the level of executive support necessary to keep it going. And a lot of it is about funding, absolutely, but it's also
giving a project time to germinate and really develop and showcase its potential. So, you know, measuring the success of something is very important. I'm sure it's not unique to Microsoft, but certainly I feel it is absolutely important at a company like this. You need to prove yourself, and you need to show the numbers, and you need to give people an opportunity to showcase their own success so that they can say, hey, like what I did with the Microsoft Tech Community team was absolutely awesome. We were able to get these results, and it helped set us up for future success, you know, case of being, you know, ABC. So one of the core tenets from an internal perspective about the Microsoft Tech Community was that it was a platform that enabled even anyone who worked on it, a marketing manager or someone from engineering, to be able to do their job even better. So, you know, because we want to make sure that we are a platform that enables the success of others. And similarly, conversely, that's kind of the same ethos that we have for externally for the community members. We want people who participate in the tech community to also be more successful in their roles, in their with any other technical objective that they have. My hope is that anyone who participates in the tech community becomes, you know, awarded an MVP like Peter Rising did as a result of his participation in the tech community, or was able to take away some nugget of information that helped them, you know, be a trusted advisor in their organization, to be able to say, hey, I also saw someone report on what's going on with the latest news around Microsoft Exchange or Microsoft Teams from the tech community. I was able to share that. I was able to confer with other experts on this topic from all around the world and be able to be more informed in that perspective. So I think, you know, when you have an ethos like that, it's only going to serve you well, because everyone wants to root for your success. And if that's the case, then it's a lot easier for you to get things going as well. But yeah, I could talk about the tech community for certainly hours. There's a lot of goodness there.
There really is, and there's so many good people who have embraced it externally to Microsoft and made it what it is, and that's been key to its success. And to name a few obvious names, there's people like Chris Hood, Adam Deltinger, Linus Cansby, Christian Bergstrom more recently, who was recently awarded MVP. So many more names I could mention, and that's probably just in my little pocket of it, where we tend to sort of gravitate more towards teams, and but it's just utterly phenomenal, and I think there's so much more to come from it. And whoever's taking your place in that role, Anna, they've got some big shoes to fill. So thank you for all that you've done with it to get it to where it is, and it's just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you for participating. Like, it's only because of people like you that it is as successful as it is. So thank you so much for all the hours that you've spent behind the keyboard helping answer people's questions.
Well, I was saying to Rue just earlier today, I feel like I've had a bit of a month off, so I need to get back into it. August has been one of my quietest months, MVP contributions-wise. So I think holiday time's over for me. get back to it, to the grind. But
oh, you don't beat yourself up. You're still doing too much. But one of the things that we talk about in this show is how folks kind of get to where they are in their careers at the minute. And you know, the tech community thing is so unique that it's not something I would imagine you kind of had a plan to end up there at some point. So how did you get into Microsoft, get into tech, and then eventually being a kind of leadership in that tech community role?
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's start from the very beginning.
Go for it.
I finished university and I just honestly didn't know where I wanted to go. I thought, okay, I've got a degree with a major in marketing and tourism hospitality management. So I was like, all right, well, I could go down the hotel and tourism route, but at the time, the tourism industry was certainly taking quite a massive hit, as it always does. It's quite a resilient industry. But I thought that would be probably more worthy for me to like lean into my marketing major a little bit more and seek a role in marketing. I, interned at a number of different places, but I landed ultimately as an intern at Microsoft Australia, where I started my journey. and I was an intern in the Dynamics product marketing team. So I helped launch a bunch of different products, namely Microsoft GP at the time and Microsoft Dynamics AX. These are all ERP products. And when I was an intern, I had no idea what ERP product. I didn't even know what it stood for. I was like, okay, well, all I know about Microsoft is Windows and Office. And so I'm looking at like the local store. I'm like, I don't know where I could buy Microsoft Dynamics. I was expecting an FPP product, right? You know, a fully packaged product on a shelf. And then as I delved deeper into my internship, I learned a lot about volume licensing and different other ways that people can purchase products, and at the partner community and how we transact through partners and how much value add that partners can provide. So I started learning a lot about the different relationships between, you know, individuals in the ecosystem, as well as understanding, you know, how, you know, people have relationships with Microsoft. Especially in the enterprise space. And I spent a lot of time, in fact, all of my time at Microsoft has always been around commercial enterprise. I've never touched on a consumer product. And that's been really interesting because how things are measured, how Microsoft manages their relationships with customers really depends on the type of product that you have. And in the world of Dynamics, certainly was very focused on industry solutions because things are very designed for manufacturing or financial services, very specific. So I spent a lot of time in the Dynamics space, and then I switched gears to another marketing role, but actually switching from product marketing to audience marketing, and I was focused on the SMB market, small to medium-sized businesses, and that was really interesting because I figured out that I suddenly had to be a jack of all trades across all the different products that SMBs cared about, as opposed to focusing on one product and looking at all the segments. Back in the when I was in Dynamics, I would have to look at everything from SMB all the way up to major enterprise customers. So shifting axes, if you will, gave me a lot of insight into what a particular customer segment cared about. So learning a lot about small to medium-sized businesses, I learned that the way that Microsoft segments businesses, some of these larger SMBs, I would not think of them as small businesses at all. I mean, they have actual, you know, CIOs and IT managers and, you know, over 1,000 employees. That's still a large, significant business, you know. So that certainly got me a lot of insight into how Microsoft sort of thinks of their customers. But I really like that. I really like that, you know, if I spent time focusing on one particular audience and helping them figure out what they needed in terms of technology that's going to help them grow, help them generate more revenue, then that's, you know, going to be a lot more easier to palate than you know, just trying to like shove a product down people's throats, you know. But ultimately, as I got, you know, spent more time in the world of marketing at Microsoft, I was like, you know what, I really want to get to headquarters. So ultimately, I made the move and moved to Seattle from Australia, and have been here since 2013. I started as a enterprise campaign manager. So this was a role that required me to create campaigns for the Microsoft subsidiaries to execute. That was basically took me away from anything that was customer facing. I was suddenly, you know, in the ivory tower, so to speak, and had to do a lot of work in terms of understanding what campaigns would execute well with particular audiences from in places all around the world, from, you know, large subsidiaries in the US to really small ones. You know, UK is definitely not a small subsidiary, but let's just say, you know, like Singapore. But even that like they all have different intricacies and different ways of executing, different set of partners to execute, right? So thinking about scale was really a challenge of that particular role. And then after I spent some time doing that role, then I moved and worked for the Office 365 IT Pro team, which led me to the Microsoft Tech community. And so a lot of these experiences combined, the scale one was really what drew me to creating a new community, ultimately became the Microsoft Tech community, because that had to be scalable. They had to scale not only to audiences all around the world, but to stretch across multiple products to help people learn and understand and make sense of all the different products and communities that were out there. So, all of these different experiences. If you ask me as an intern or when I finish university, would I ever want to lead a community? I wouldn't even know what that really meant.
Yeah.
But one of the things I often talk to people about when it comes to career development is take all the things that really gave you energy, things that you were really passionate about, and eventually it will lead you to the place that you were destined to go to. If you're lucky enough. And when I say luck is only a product of timing, and when I say opportunity, I mean a connection to someone who understands you, understands what your strengths are, and understands where you could thrive. And if all those things line up, then that's luck on your side, because the job has opened up and you finally landed yourself somewhere that really was able to exploit the best of your strengths, to the benefit of the company, obviously, but certainly what you want to do. So yeah, one of the things I've always told people is tell people what it is that you want to do, even if it's just an inkling. If you want to, focus more on customers, great. If you want to focus more on product, great. Tell people, because then they'll have that little seed in their mind and think, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for Rue to look into X or Y. I heard about this. And Peter would be fantastic at it. Why don't you have a chat with him, even if he's not looking, just to see whether he would be interested. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great advice. Asking you shall receive kind of thing, right?
Yes.
It's like you said, it's planting the seed and it's building your network, right? And like you said, it might just be a passing comment. Oh, I'm really interested in yada, yada, yada. And then as time goes on, your luck just lines up, and whoever you had that conversation with, they know someone or they themselves are hiring in that kind of role. And that was interesting. One of the things you mentioned there, you mentioned that to you, luck was a combination of, what did you say? Was it timing plus kind of just your experience and having things line up, right? And I like that one because luck's a funny word, right? And it can trigger people in different ways. And it kind of triggers me in a way when folks say, oh, you're so lucky. And it's kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of luck to it, but there's also a lot of hard work and a lot of sweat and a lot of tears and all that kind of thing.
Yes.
And there's what's seen and what's not seen, right? So from the outside looking in, someone might look very lucky in their career, but what you're not seeing is 12-hour days. You're not seeing, difficulties through their personal life because they're sacrificing to do their work, things like that, right? And I guess where I'm kind of leading to with a question with this is, obviously Microsoft is a very respected company insofar as they put a lot of focus on work-life harmony, right? But then also on work, working hard and delivering good products. How do you find that balance, therefore, in your line of work, insofar as making sure that, we're working hard and we're delivering good stuff for customers, but we're not killing ourselves while we're doing it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Rue, and something I've been ruminating on for quite some time, especially as the way we've worked is completely shifted to 100% virtual. And that's going to be the case for Microsoft for, I can't remember the exact date, but it kept shifting, right? It was eventually going to go back to the office like in July, and then became August, and then September, and then it's like, oh, if you really need to, you can. Our campuses are open, but we are recommending you don't. Man, there's a lot to unpack on that one. Just because I have certainly killed myself on many an occasion to do my work, and I think people do appreciate hard work, but they don't appreciate you killing yourself in order to do it, for sure. You do want to make sure that whatever you're spending your time, energy on from a work perspective, it's going to be, it's worth your time. You learn as an intern that you can easily get busy. You can easily say yes to every single thing, but not everything that you say yes to will result in an outcome that is going to serve you for your next project or job or whatever it is. You want to make sure that you're spending the right amount of energy towards the right things. And one of the things that I certainly learned about was, it's important to do the work, but the work will only shine if you also work on your network as well. We all work with people. We can't work without people. And so if you're not doing the work to preserve good relationships, as well as doing things to serve your own personal development, helping you learn, then you're just treading water. You don't really have a rudder, and you don't really have a sense of direction of where you want to go. So always think of everything as a passage of time. You're always learning, and you're always getting insights and things that will intrigue you. So as you are working hard, if you are getting energized about that work, great. That's awesome. You may be working 8 to 8 days. I don't encourage that, but if it's something that you're super passionate about, you know that it will help you towards your goals, I salute you. But if you're working 8 to 8, doing something that you when you wake up in the morning and you're just dreading opening up your computer, you don't want to meet with your manager, you don't want to meet with your team, that's a sign that you're not putting your time towards the right places, and you should be looking elsewhere. But there are also assets that you have in your current job that allow you to move on to potentially your next role, or to discover something new that you might be interested in. I certainly, if I look back at my career, I'm like, there were lots of great things, but there were lots of terrible experiences as well. And you can still learn from those experiences. I learned about, what great managers do. Great managers for me don't micromanage. Great managers are always there to, have a collaborative relationship with you. They're not there to tell you what to do, but they're there to guide you, and align you to the business objectives so that you can be more successful. They're not trying to get in your way. Well, bad managers certainly are trying to get in your way, but you should be able to find out whether they're working in your favor or not pretty early on.
I completely agree with everything you've just said there, Anna. Absolutely fantastic. And there are so many tools now within Microsoft. Oh, have we lost Anna?
I see.
Oh, I'm here. I don't know why my camera shifted.
I see snap camera now.
I am going to try and fix that. But
yeah,
I
we'll
don't
just
know
keep
what
talking.
happened. Okay, no worries.
Well, we troubleshoot the technical difficulties. But yeah, I mean, as you were saying, Pete, totally agree with you. And Pete was just saying he agreed with you.
Completely.
You can definitely learn from the bad stuff as well, right? It's you learn what kind of things you're looking for in a company. You learn what kind of things you're looking for in a manager. The right questions to ask.
Oh, I think we have lost Anna now.
Oh, still lost you. Oh yeah, device is not connected.
Yeah.
Oh,
pause.
There we go.
Here we go.
Okay.
Oh, she's gone again.
Up and down.
Can you hear me okay?
We
can hear you fine, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just have to kill this video. For some reason, Snap Camera really wants to be part of the party here, but well, anyway, I've just had problems with Snap Camera. So if this is okay, just let me. Yeah,
of course it is. Yeah, absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. We always have some sort of technical issue on the show. Yeah. This is fine. No problem at all.
We'll superimpose some kind of embarrassing avatar or something like that over it.
You know what you could do? You could use any one of those photos of me from that photo shoot that I did back in the day when I had purple hair. I don't know if you've seen that.
This was going to be one of my questions. Yeah. I was going to say, do you get some kind of commission every time Microsoft uses your picture in a marketing campaign? Because you're an expert in everything. You can do Defender, you can do Intune, you can do Power.
This leads to a really good question, actually, because you're proving the point that these people are actually real people. And I often wonder, who are these people in the demo tenants, like Adele Vance and Nesta Wyke and all those? Are they people who actually work for Microsoft, who just volunteered, or are they models, or where do they come from?
I can tell you some stories about that. So, so not every single photo shoot that you've ever had, that we've ever had at Microsoft, feature real people. Some of them are certainly just models that, we hire through agencies and pose and look very businessy. They're always like holding a device and talking, looking at a person, looking like they're talking, listening. So we've done a lot of things like that. But from a demo tenant point of view, a lot of the names that you see when you're using a Microsoft demo actually are names of real employees. And the photos that you see, sometimes they are them, sometimes they're not. Most likely they're not them. Usually it's some stock photo. But tenants, the actual names, the personas are real people. I can't remember any names off the top of my head, but I'll always be surprised when I'm in a meeting. I'm like, that name seems really familiar. And then I realized I've seen that name at a Microsoft demo, at a Microsoft Ignite or something like that. I'm like, oh, so you're that person. And they're like, yeah, funny story. So yeah, it's really funny.
I think Megan Bowen's got quite a following, actually. She's, I think she might even have her own Twitter page.
There's a Twitter page
right.
for it. Yeah.
I wonder if Megan Bowen was actually a real person. I'm gonna look her up in the global address list to see.
Absolutely. It's funny because you grow a relationship with these fake demo users. I remember once there was a Microsoft Mechanics demo video of. I think it was a feature called Communications Compliance or something like that for Microsoft Teams. And Nestor Wilk, if I'm getting the name right, in the demo tenants, he started swearing at Adele Vance in one of the demo tenants to demonstrate this compliance feature. And I've never been able to look at that account the same way since. I've always thought he's a bad guy because he did that to Adele. But
that is so funny. I absolutely love that. The communication compliance is such a great feature, actually. One that I'm particularly interested in, but let's not go down a compliance discussion. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
Yeah, we'll go down a black hole.
We'll go down a black hole because I love that stuff. But yeah, fantastic. All these are the sort of stories we like. But one thing you did mention on briefly as well when you were talking about your amazing journey to where you are today, Anna, is that you relocated from Australia to the US. Can you just tell us how was that for you? Was that scary? Was that fun? Was that what emotions did you feel? How did you adjust to that?
Oh, emotions were high. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you this. After living and growing up in Sydney, Australia, I was like, why would I want to move to rainy Seattle? The beaches where there are sand are very limited to start with. You hear about the rain and the dreariness all the time. So I was like, you know what? I'll give the US 2 years tops and then decide whether I want to stay on. And hey, look at me, I've been here for 8 years now. So so much for giving it a 2-year run. But I've really enjoyed my time in the US. It's not without its faults. I certainly feel that moving to the US has made the world seem a lot smaller. Australia is quite isolated, and I never realized how isolated it was until I moved here. Whenever I go back home and pay attention to the news, the type of news that they report on is very different to what the news reports are in the US. And it just makes you feel like the US does, whether you like it or not, is kind of the center of the universe right now in terms of all the things that are happening, whether it's pandemic related or political, geopolitical. It is really... It's a lightning rod for a lot of different issues as well. So it's been interesting observing it from the sidelines. Certainly when a lot of the protests were going on around Black Lives Matter and amongst other things, people are asking me, "Are you okay? Are you like in the middle of the gun violence?" I'm looking outside my window and all I see is just someone mowing the lawn. That's the most violence I can see. So that's not to say I'm isolated from it. I've certainly learnt how I behave and how I think about people's identity, how the political correctness of the workplace, as well as just, general interpersonal relations. I don't think they're any different, but it's just that the level of tolerance for it is very different if I compare Australian to American culture. And I don't think that's I would say that, in Australian culture, we are a lot more forgiving of it, but that's not necessarily a good thing. I think we've given people a little too much leeway to say what they want to say. Whereas in America, it's like, hey, you can say what you want to say. That's totally within my rights. But there is a lot more consciousness about what the impact of what you're saying and the impact of your behavior on others. So it's been a very interesting learning experience, especially in the last 2 years, I would say. But I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. I still think I want to spend a lot more time in the US for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And like you said, it is kind of the center of the world, isn't it? Certainly as far as culture goes, as far as tech goes, it's definitely the center of our world. It's kind of like, because for a long time, I was interested in moving to the States. I used to be obsessed with the idea of moving to Texas and all that kind of stuff and having a ranch. And that's just because I lived in Scotland where the weather's always horrible and over there it's always nice. But and it's kind of like, it would be like, you just kind of think, it's like, it must be like living in Athens during, 400 BC and all that kind of stuff, just because it's the center of the world. Everything spills out of America and into the rest of it, doesn't it? And there's good and there's bad, but that's true of everywhere. And at the end of the day, it's a massive country. And I think I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts on this are from the Australian perspective, but certainly in Britain, there's a degree of, what would the word be? Snobbiness, I guess would be the word, or a lot of condescension as far as, America's all full of gun nuts and things like that. And I go back to the point where, this is a country of 350 million people.
Right.
So if you see one bad thing on the news involving two people, statistically, let's not paint a broad brush here.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with your sentiment. I certainly thought I've been guilty of thinking Americans were all one and the same, but that's not true. And even the idea of the United States is kind of a fallacy because it is a very divided country.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that that's unique to the United States. I think, if you look at the UK, especially with Brexit, Australia is the same. Like right now, like it's just kind of crazy with the amount of anti-vax sentiment. I never thought in my wildest dreams that there'd be a growth in that type of in that sort of conversation. When I was growing up, there was no question I had to get my mumps, measles, rubella vaccine. That was just what I had to do to be a protected child. But nonetheless, I think one of the things that's really important, and this kind of goes back to the sentiment around community, is that we have to recognize people as human beings first and foremost. One of the things that's really been heartening, especially as I've been working on community work during this time, is that it's something that creates bridges across communities all around the world. So and I think it's really important that we don't just try and create our own bubbles and find people who are similar because we all, are white Americans or, want some other type of, segmentation. If we are all united because we are equally passionate about Power Platform, then awesome. Let's talk about that. And we can connect people from Saudi Arabia to the UK, to Singapore, to Australia, all focused on that. And if we can, manage to create conversations with people all around the world because of this, that's awesome, because we are able to make these connections that maybe these people never would have had if it wasn't for this technology. And I think that's, to sound a little bit Disney-esque, it certainly makes the world go around in that way. And it's something that we need desperately, because where people are feeling more isolated, feeling more disconnected, and to know that there is someone else out there in the world who is potentially, working on a very similar project or having similar challenges on in their workplace around, adopting teams or whatever. If we can help them in some way, then hopefully that small element of goodness is going to help drive better connection and more positive energies around the world. And that's me just being a hippie for 5 minutes, but still there's something really important about that. And I just never thought that I would be this kind of feelings and emotions type of person in a tech company trying to facilitate that kind of community connection. But it's given me a lot of hope and faith in humanity. And, that's why, for my next role, I really wanted to make sure community was a big part of that. And so I'm really glad I found myself here.
I think we all just need to listen as much as anything to everyone else's point of view and try and understand where people are coming from. Certainly you referenced Brexit in this country, in the UK, where Rue and I live, has been incredibly divisive. And people just take a stand, whichever side they're on, and say, well, you're wrong, without really listening to what the other person's got to say about it. And there needs to be more of that, coming together and listening and trying to understand. And I think we need to get a bit better in this country, certainly, at that sort of thing, because from my perspective, I don't know how you felt about this, Rue, I've always felt that we maybe don't come across the best as a nation across the rest of the world in terms of our sense of entitlement. Maybe we've got a bit of that about us, and an example of that was very early on in the pandemic. There was concern from our government that would the British public tolerate a lockdown, for example? Would we would we accept what was happening to us? Because a lot of people I was talking to at the time were, that won't happen here. That's not the sort of thing that happens in Britain. That happens in other countries. That won't happen to us. And there was a bit of an arrogance about us. So that disturbs me greatly.
I think in my experience with different discussions with different folks from different countries, I think a lot of folks feel that way about their country. I don't know if it's kind of like we have this self-conscious thing about wherever we're from and how do other countries look at our country and things like that. The way I've always tried to approach it is the lowest or the most unique minority is the individual, right? And you have to judge people based on them as individuals. And I think as soon as you start making judgments or assuming ABC about someone because of XYZ about someone, that's when it starts causing a little bit of problems. And I try to stay away from those kinds of discussions. I like to sit in my little tech bubble and avoid the news and politics and all that kind of stuff, because it can, especially on social media, I find it can breed quite a lot of tribalism, a lot of nastiness, because it's easy to do it behind a computer screen, right? It's easy to say a whole bunch of stuff behind a computer screen, but you step away from the keyboard, you go outside and you talk to folks. And kind of to your point earlier, Anna, where it's like, well, there's something horrible going on in the news, and you step outside and there's folk mowing the lawn, there's kids playing. It can be easy to get angry and frustrated when you're consuming it all online, right? And it's been shoved in your face. Whereas I like to just kind of take a step back and think, well, we're a big world. There's a lot of nasty stuff going on, but there's also a lot of good stuff going on. And that tries to keep me level, because otherwise I'd end up being like a kind of political junkie and getting too involved in it. And I tried to take a step back from it all, because I just don't think it's good for your mental health in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the earlier discussion we had around work-life balance, right? Because like a lot of these things can, really weigh on your mind and be an absolute burden. And the more you ruminate on it, the more you're pushing yourself down a spiral that is potentially very damaging. So, I highly encourage people to, do, what's the term? A digital respite. I don't know being able to just, unplug from screens and just spend time on, connecting with yourself, or, finding other ways to do it. Some people like to connect with nature. Some people like to, delve into their hobbies, because it's quite there is some level of toxicity around the current news. The pandemic is a really tricky one, because you can certainly say, hey, like, this is, your personal choice on, how you choose, whether you choose to vaccinate yourself or whether to choose a mask. But unfortunately, those choices have such an impact on everyone around them. Right. And so you can't really isolate an individual for their opinion, because it does, their behavior that connects to that opinion ultimately impacts everyone around them. So that, I think, of all the issues that have come to light in the last 2 years, this is something that has really driven, I think, even been more divisive than everything else that's been going on, because it's got a lot to do with, more than just that individual's choices. So yeah, I don't know. I'll to bring it back to Microsoft and products.
I'll be interested to see how you do this.
One of the things I find really interesting about, how, thinking about Microsoft as a monolith and thinking of Microsoft as this one thing that, people wanting to vex against. I'm reminded of a recent, well, I don't know if this is a recent article, but it's an article that we published in the tech community that would draw a lot of ire from the community. And it was about modern commenting in Word. No joke. People were complaining that they didn't like the way that you could do co-authored commenting through Word Online, and thinking, this is Microsoft being idiotic and nobody wants to do it this way. And ultimately, Microsoft's like, have you seen how other, non-Word, like word processing cloud solutions are also doing this? It's just like, I'm sorry, but like, this is coming from the perspective of the product team. Like, this is the feature that we have to do. It's based on customer feedback. We looked at the telemetry. You guys don't have this data. This feature is not going away. But like, there are certainly some choices that when we think about, all the different feedback that we get from the community, like there are certainly some things that we have to do in order to, and we have access to the data to know that certain features are working the way they want and are getting the uptake that is needed to really get that level of groundswell. So sometimes we do have to take the feedback and go, you know what, like, this is something that we have to push forward with. But it's not because we just on a whim decided. It's because, we want to enable better collaboration. We want to enable, the features that are based on, customer feedback. So, trying to connect the conversation right now in terms of like, there is a lot of divisiveness, and, certainly there's conversations that people have with us, say, hey, like, we don't know if Microsoft, you're going down the right direction, but we also understand what the overall vision is of the product and what's going to, we're still a business ultimately, and we want to make our products grow and get more adoption around the world. So there are certainly unpopular decisions like that, but we also have to keep in mind, we want to keep our community thriving, and certainly people who have been with the product for a really long time have certain agendas, and that's fine. There's no problem with that. We certainly want to keep the conversation going, and we want to maintain, listening. But we want to make sure that this is a two-way conversation. And when we do iterate on why we've made certain decisions, and we're not feeling like what we're saying is really resonating with our community, sometimes we just have to call and say, hey, like, this is the decision we're making and going ahead. It's not easy. We're trying to, and one of the things I've always tried to encourage teams to do is say, be a human first. Like, don't hide behind, say, the product team's alias, because they don't know who you are. Then you only exacerbating the monolith idea of being a faceless corporate entity. If you are, representing yourself, hey, I am representing the team behind this product. I am so-and-so. I'm Anna Chu. I look after this particular product. And this is how I really want to be a PM. For Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents as well. So, I'm Anna Chu. I am my own, person. I'm Australian. I'm Asian. I am an immigrant. I am a daughter of immigrants. I'm all these different things. I'm an intersectional person. But I'm also a representative of this product, and I want to collect your feedback. I want to hear it. I want to take that feedback on, send it to the engineering team, see how it fits in our roadmap, and be able to have the data to support all the things that you want to see in the product. And then I want to have the conversation with the engineering team and say, hey, this is what they want, and I want to understand from their perspective, this is the vision that we have for these products. This is what we want to enable. This is how we want to see it connect to all these other products. This is what we see as, a potential, user scenario around AI or, mixed reality. I don't know. I'm just making things up at this point. But, once I can see that vision and relay it back to what our customer feedback is, our customer feedback sometimes is usually mired in the present, sometimes mired in the past. I don't know how much of it can be future oriented. I feel like our MVP community are really great at seeing the future vision, the RD community especially. And so I certainly take a lot of their feedback and add that all together. I really want to, collect all of that conversation. I know I'm at the intersection of it all. And if I can sort of relay the conversation back to the community, back to engineering, I think that we can create something really good from that. I don't know what it is. These are all abstract things that I've gotten in my head right now, but I'm really excited about what's going to happen next.
Oh, I have a funny feeling you're going to do very well in your new role, Anna. I love the passion and excitement you've got for it, and
Definitely.
the human aspect that you're injecting into that. So awesome! More power to you. I love it.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. One thing I do want to talk about very, very briefly, I'm mindful of time and how valuable it is to you, to all of us, is a little bit about the Microsoft events that you've been involved with in your previous role.
Yep.
The big events like Ignite and Inspire and Build. And if I'm forgetting any, I apologize. But I know you've had a lot to do behind the scenes with those events. Can you tell us a little bit about that and take us behind the scenes a little bit? Any funny stories, anything that you can tell us about that?
I miss events so much. I haven't been on a plane for so long. I don't even know where my passport is at this point. But one of the things that I'm so grateful that I had an opportunity to be part of events, because that was the only avenue that allowed me to meet people in the community in person. I was able to foster relationships that way. There's something that you can never take away from an in-person interaction. As much as I feel like I've only interacted with Peter virtually. But, if I met you in person, I would actually, see how you present. And I'd really see the relationships that you've fostered through the local community that you have, because you'd introduced me to people in the community. Like, I've never met Rue before. But we can also do this virtually, of course, but it's just a little different. But yeah, behind the scenes with community at events, I was usually tasked with leading that particular work stream. And my agenda for that was always, we need to have community voices. We do all this work in collecting all of the different speakers from Microsoft to present this breakout or be part of this keynote. And I'm always the one with my hand raised saying, what about community? How do we make sure that community voice is present at this event? Because speaking from a Microsoft point of view, it's really important we have that community perspective, because you guys keep it real. You give the audience real life examples of how these products work. You share best practices. You are able to provide an objective point of view. As much as, we love to, share, Microsoft's point. It's still Microsoft. We're still a corporate entity. We're still going to be, paying the company line. And I always want to make sure that in order to give value to the people who are taking time away from being at the desks, from their family to attend these events, that they're getting value from, real talk that comes from the community. So a lot of the work that I did with community was focused on Microsoft Ignite, as well as Microsoft Ignite the Tour, to get people from the local community to share their, stories through theater sessions, through breakouts, through community voices that are in Microsoft breakouts. So that was something that I really enjoyed. And it was a lot of work. I can tell you, all of the stories around, having to, navigate through, oh man, where do I start? Like, just even finding speakers and learning about different languages and cultures and understanding, what social media platforms actually resonate better in order to get the message out there. Like, I learned in Brazil, it's actually Instagram more than anything else. And all the different, and seeing people's cause let's be honest, being in the Microsoft tech community, I was really only able to support English speaking communication and until once I actually was able to go to different places like Japan, Brazil, and different parts of like Western Europe as well, that I realized that we need to better foster international connection through community. So that's why we enabled all of the different languages that you can see in the tech community: French, German, Spanish, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Brazilian, Portuguese, to name a few. So yeah, like that was certainly a big part of it. I will say there are definitely lots of personalities that you meet. I don't know if you've ever had to staff a booth at an event before, but you definitely get someone who ends up like spending a whole 20 minutes of you complaining about everything that Microsoft has ever done wrong. And I'm like, sir, madam, I can't help you with this particular issue. Do you want to talk to an engineer? Let me walk you to someone who can actually, help you with this. But then I realized that some people actually don't want to be helped. They just want to vent. And, even if it takes 20 minutes of my time at a booth when I could be answering someone else's question, if they need me to be the person they vent to, fine. I'm happy to be that person. It may not net me anything tangible to do, but if they just need someone to talk to, that's okay. I think we all need to have some kind of connection. But I really hope that by hosting these events, we are able to solve people's challenges with technology. That's the whole point of all of this. The travel is fine. The travel is fun, but we're doing it for a reason. We're doing it in order to help people connect with someone at Microsoft. I'll tell you this: I used to do events even in Australia, and Australia is a very big country as well, kind of roughly the size of Texas or maybe even bigger. I can't remember what the quote is, but we once traveled to Perth, which is one of the most remote cities in Australia, and we didn't expect so many people to turn up, and that's because they're just not used to Microsoft turning up to their part of the world. Once we turned up, then we will get hounded with questions about, BPOS at the time, and what was called Windows Azure at the time, not Microsoft Azure. Just because these people would usually spend hours on customer support hotlines or and just never get an answer from Microsoft. And to actually find someone who represented that product to answer questions for them then and there, the immediacy and urgency just was really highlighted how much help people need when it comes to learning about our products. So I really see events as like a lightning rod for community interaction, but we can't do events forever, and we certainly would rack up a huge expense bill if we did that. So doing things like online community really helps us scale, because while Microsoft is trying to answer a lot of the questions, we also need the community to come and provide some of the more, what's the word I'm looking for, objective point of view and opinion to help others with their challenges.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because you mentioned that point about event budgets and things like that, and obviously putting on events like Ignite, I shudder to think of what the kind of budget for something like Ignite is. And that kind of brings me, how do you see the future then? Because is the future going to be, we have these massive events again? Because obviously there's a lot of interest for that again, and folk talk about how we're going to have this thing like, the roaring 20s again, because everyone just wants to get out and do stuff after being locked in their houses for 2 years. Do you think that will go back to it, or do you see more hybrid events where the scale is a little bit smaller and you're leveraging tools such as Teams to then have them online in large part?
Oh, I will tell you this. The appetite for hybrid events is high as soon as we see vaccination rates increase, as soon as we see the number of cases go down. But the moment that both of those things, vaccinations aren't increasing to the rate that we'd like to see, new cases are increasing with different variants of the coronavirus, the conversation around hybrid is no longer comes into the picture. We stay with virtual. And that's the plan for the upcoming Ignite event in November as well. We are having a fully digital event again. But there was talk of hybrid only a month ago. I will tell you that, just because there was a lot of hope. But as soon as that goes away, like basically we cannot do in-person events until we can safely host them. If I shudder to think of the super spreader event that could happen if we ran another Microsoft Ignite as it was. That's just not going to happen. So like I think, one of the things that one of my last projects I did on the tech community was Tech Community Live, and that is an event that happened on the tech community that allowed for the community to ask questions live in the tech community, see our experts on camera virtually, and get their questions answered that way. We are doing more and more to enable that kind of connection because we need to have something in lieu of these in-person events, a place and time for people to ask their questions, and make it be live as well as feel like the best that we can to be an in-person event.
I think there's a need to cater for everybody as well. I think that the virtual events have been absolutely fantastic. I think, thank goodness for the technology that's been available to support that as well. If this pandemic had hit 10 years ago, we would be in a far different position. But speaking as, I'm a bit of a contradiction in terms because I consider myself an introvert, but I'm an introvert who never shuts up. So am I really an introvert? I don't know. But if given the choice, I think I prefer virtual to in person, but then I do like in person as well. But there's a lot of people who won't want to give this up. I know a lot of people who have actually thrived on this and enjoyed it and are actually quite scared about getting back out into the community. And we have to look after those people as well and consider how we take care of them and give them. And don't just say, right, that's done now. You've got to go back to the way it was. So interesting lessons to be learned.
Yeah, it's a good point because everything folks have been through for the last 18, 19, 20 months, that's changed a lot of folks, right? And there will be a lot of nervousness going back to in person, both in terms of health and safety, but also just like the socialness can get a bit exhausting in a way, right? It's funny because you haven't seen your friends and family for so long, and then all of a sudden they join you, and it can be quite draining, at least to a lot of folks in tech who are, like you said, Pete, maybe a bit more introverted, right?
Yeah. Introversion is really about where you get your energy, the introversion and extroversion. If you get your, I don't know, I feel like everyone's had to shift in their preferences because we've had to spend a lot of time with ourselves. And the moment that we get a chance to interact with anybody, albeit virtually, suddenly we just, like you say, Peter, we don't shut up because it's suddenly, someone's going to listen to me and someone's going to hear all of my ramblings, which is fine. Going back to, so I'll tell you this, when it comes to running an event, if the trouble I have with hybrid is that it's kind of only half of, the best of in-person and the best of virtual. I'll explain why. It's because, when it comes to creating an event, it's still about people. Ultimately, we all do work with people. And if you're asking the same person to do the event in person as well as hybrid, you are asking them to do twice the work. And that's from a perspective of doing the in-person interaction as well as supporting the virtual interaction.
Yeah, so good point.
I feel like you got to do one or the other. Hybrid is really tough because you're going to have to actually use double the resources. I will, my opinion, this is just an opinion, I don't think we at Microsoft Ignite did you could say that they were kind of hybrid because there was some type of streaming of the in-person experience, but that's what it was. It was streaming of the in-person experience. It wasn't trying to support a virtual experience wholly. You couldn't really interact in the same way as you would in an in-person experience as you would a hybrid. So a virtual rather. So I have a lot of opinions about this. I'm very aware of time as well. We could have a whole nother episode about hybrid events. I'm not an expert at it, but I have opinions.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's if you try to cater for all audiences, then sometimes you end up not catering for any of them, right? And you don't deliver the best experience. Absolutely. Get it. Well, so in the name of time, let's start wrapping this up. But before you go, we have the obligatory question we need to run past everyone. Just because we're keeping a running tally here of something very, very relevant to all our careers. I hope you're a movie buff, because the question we ask every guest is, as far as the Terminator series goes, the greatest movie series ever created, Terminator 1 versus Terminator 2, where do you stand on this significant issue?
I wish I had seen these questions a lot earlier to watch both of them and be able to assess them. But I will tell, I'm a Terminator 2 stalwart through and through. Like, I don't know why. I don't even remember. I mean, I do remember Terminator 1, but Terminator 2 just like resonated with me. Not resonated, it just like stuck with me a lot more. Ultimately, I was a teenager at the time, and I really had the hots for Eddie Furlong. There was that. But I don't know. Like, I feel like how many years was it between the two movies?
It was quite a bit. I don't think it was inconsequential. 5, 6, 7 years, something like
84 and 91, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So was it kind of like a bit of an Arnie comeback, or like it just seemed like Arnold Schwarzenegger had a resurgence in his career because of that movie? I don't know. I'm just trying to remember like the Predator sort of timeline. I don't know, but I mean, he's had an amazing career.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I'm just. For me, it's always Terminator 2. Like, if I had a choice, like without even watching either of the trailer and just going back from memory, I would choose to watch Terminator 2 over Terminator 1.
Absolutely. Right answer. That is the correct answer. That's really
yeah, I agree.
I will say this. I have been on a bit of a tear when it comes to dystopian movies as of late. I rewatched Blade Runner. I rewatched, and I've watched some recent ones. Someone recommended I watched The High Rise on Twitter the other day, and that was excellent. I've watched a lot of I watched Sphere the other day, and I will say this: it is a terrible movie from a dialogue perspective. It does too much of saying, "Oh, so this is why we need to press this button because of X explanation of science fact." Like, I don't need just tell me a story. I don't need to understand how this works from a scientific perspective, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it had a great cast. It had Sharon Stone, Samuel L. Jackson, Dustin Hoffman. It had everything going for it. The script was just terrible. So, yeah, there you go.
What a shame.
Yeah. There's a lot of these kind of dystopian action movies that the dialogue, it just doesn't age so well, right? In your head, you're thinking back and you're like, oh, that was amazing when I watched it when I was 12 years old. And then you go back and watch it, and it's kind of like, this is a bit embarrassing.
one that I really love is well, I don't love all of it, but I love the start of it. Is 28 Days Later, just because of that atmospheric walk through London that Cillian Murphy does with that haunting music and the bus on its side. After that, when it goes a bit zombie-like, I'm a little bit
I do love that movie. It's like I love anything that Danny Boyle does. So yeah, excellent choice.
Oh, he's so good. So good.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So I guess we'll give you back some time. Thanks a lot for joining us. That was really illuminating discussion. I guess good luck as well with your new role. Not that you really need
absolutely.
It, but I hope everything goes well, however the role turns out to be.
Yeah.
And like Pete said earlier, whoever steps into your shoes in terms of being that figurehead at the top of tech community, they've got pretty big boots to fill. So good luck to them as well.
Absolutely. Do keep in touch with us, Anna. You're always welcome back. We'd love to have you back on again.
I'd love to be back on.
Maybe next time we'll get you visually for the whole time rather than a pulsating white dot for the second half. So
I'll grab some of the marketing pictures and dot them in when we're
that's a challenge for you, Ruth. See if we can do that.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see that. That would be
is there anything you'd like to say before we go, though? Anything else you'd like to say, or how people can reach you on Twitter, LinkedIn, if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, I'm going to get back onto Twitter, so you can find me at _ACHU. So that's _ACHU. And I mean, I'm really excited about this role. I'm really excited to reconnect with the Power Addicts community. I met many of them through a lot of the Ignite the Tour cities that I went to. So excited about my journey into engineering. I really look forward to reconnecting with community as well. I'm so happy to have met you, Rue, and to reconnect with you, Peter. There's certainly a lot more that I have to say in the coming months. So I would love to be back on your show for sure. And I might even like swing some people in your direction as I start to connect with more people in the Microsoft engineering side of things. So yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Please do. That is great. It's been an absolute pleasure. We shall let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. Congratulations again. Good luck in the role. Rue, congratulations again on
Yes,
MVP.
congratulations, Rue.
Thank
So
you.
deserved.
Cheers.
So deserved. Now you'll spend the next month drinking from the fire hose. There's a lot of information going to come your way, so drink it in.
Yep, drink it in.
But thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure to be in your company as ever. We will wrap this one up and see you on the next exciting episode of Cloud Conversations. And we might just have some interesting news for you very soon about where Cloud Conversations is going. So I'll leave you with that little tidbit, and you make of that what you will. But take care all, and we'll catch you down the road. Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Cheers,
Thanks so
guys.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.